Good morning. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Welcome to the November 8, 2021 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners for Shawnee County. My name is Kevin Cook. I serve as the chair, also representing District 2. Joining me this morning is Commissioner Bill Rippon, representing District 1. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Aaron Mays, representing District 3. Good morning.
Morning.
Madam Clerk, before we begin, we do need to add one item under the consent agenda. This would be an item 2B. It is to reflect a letter signed by the county commissioners in support of a grant application to the Kansas Department of Transportation for a Family Service and Guidance Center. This was brought to us, and we want to make sure that we get it on for the time frame that they need. So that is a addition to our agenda. With that, we are ready to begin.
Okay. Item 1, Proclamations presentations. A, Kansas Emergency Management Association Award presentation.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Russell Stuckey, and I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Riley County and also the past president of the Kansas Emergency Management Association. As part of the privilege of being president, I get to award the KEMA President's Choice Award, and I'll read a little short thing here. The award was instituted in 2015 to honor a person, group, or organization that made a significant contribution to their agency, the emergency management profession, or the association. The president will have the sole discretion as to the recipient of this award. So, thanks to COVID, I was the president for 2 years, when you're normally only president for one. That's happened to many associations, I'm sure. And so, for the 2021 award, I thought about different people that have contributed a lot to the emergency management realm, and the name that kept coming to my head was the person who serves as the Northeast Kansas Homeland Security Council Secretary, and he also serves as the Northeast Kansas Region KEMA Vice President, and that is Nelson Castile. So I'd like to present Nelson with the 2021 President's Choice Award. Nelson does a lot for keeping I serve as the Vice Chair of the Homeland Security Region, and Nelson does a lot for us, keeping us informed of what's going on at the State House and a lot of our projects and everything in line. And so his efforts are greatly appreciated far and wide, not only in the Northeast region, but clear across the state. So.
Nelson, can you come up and we'll take a quick photo with you?
Get in the back.
You're going to be front and center, Nelson.
Good.
Thank you.
Nelson, congratulations. Congratulations.
Before Nelson gets back to his chair, I want everybody to take a note. Nelson, I think you've got 2 phones, 2 radios at all times. Nelson is the embodiment of emergency management, of being always prepared, and he's such a key part of our team for emergency management for Shawnee County and all that he does. But also, over the last year, everything that Nelson did with COVID and how he worked with the COVID response team was a really integral part of that. And I think that it goes without saying that we would not have done as well as we have without the work of Nelson. And so just really want to thank you, Nelson, and thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah, I'll add to that if it's all right.
Absolutely.
So in addition to his work on COVID this last year, Nelson also is in charge of the Ambulance Advisory Board, and so if it weren't for Nelson, our ambulance service in Shawnee County would probably be lacking. He also was instrumental in the Country Stampede and the Thunder of the Heartland this year. I went out there and spent a little bit of time with emergency management, And Nelson was working very hard on that, and a number of other things. He's one of the more detailed people I've ever met in my life. He is always looking for the details and everything, and has done a fantastic job. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Nelson, and congratulations.
Commissioner Cook mentioned he had 2 phones, 2 radio. You should see his desk. There's 3 of everything down there. So, anyway, very good job, Nelson. Thank you for all.
Well deserved, Nelson. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk,
The next item is item 3, consent agenda.
there are 2 items on the consent agenda. Are there any questions, or is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Rippon, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item 4, new business, A, County Clerk, number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Commissioners, this morning we have vouchers totaling $1,489,486.63. There are 3 items of note on that. Under Equipment Fund to Field Turf USA for $539,332.42 is for the turf projects on the softball fields at Lake Shawnee, and then also to the Bettis Family Sports Complex multi-use field. And then under general expense to Evergreen Solutions, $14,790 is for the wage study. That's the final payment on that one. And then to, under sheriff to performance tire and auto, $26,631.07 is for new tires for some of the patrol cars. So I don't have any questions about any of this, and if you don't, I would move for approval.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Mays.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passed 3-0. Our next item.
Item A2, consider correction orders.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item B, Planning Department, number 1, public hearing and consider approval of resolution number 2021-105, a master PUD site plan major amendment to allow medical care facility types 2 on the portion of the PUD zoned multifamily residential for the Aldersgate Village Retirement Community located at 7220 Southwest Asbury Drive.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Anderson, Planning Director. The first item on your agenda for the Planning Department is for an amendment to the PUD that governs the Aldersgate Village development, PUD development. The applicant is looking to add 2 additional home plus dwellings. Each would have 12 units or 12 beds within each of those 2 units, and an independent living apartment complex that would have 50 units within it. The Aldersgate Village is a sprawling piece of property. Obviously, about half of it is built out. The properties that are in question, the areas that are in question are located over off of Oxford and in this Asbury and in this part of the area here in the more developed part of the project. We did notify over 400 people. All this area in the yellow is people who received notice. We actually didn't receive any comments back in response. The only person, the only organization that had questions was the school, the Indian Hills Elementary School. I'll talk about them in a minute, but we didn't have any neighborhood opposition. I think that's a sign that the Aldersgate Village people are good neighbors in the area. Here you can see in more detail where the proposed units are relocated. Right now, there's an existing Home Plus building right here. The 2 new ones would flank it to the north and to the south. The new apartment complex will be located just south of the Methodist Church, just east of the school district. The common property line between the school district and the church and this apartment complex is just this little notch up here where it says 165. So that's the extent of the adjacency of the two properties. In more detail, I have the site plan if we need to refer to it. The concern of the school district is this parking area that'd be located behind the apartment complex. There's a playground on the school property. They were concerned, the school district was, that there might be safety and security concerns with people parking in those spaces who may not be living there, and possible abductions and security issues with the children who were there, people being picked up and taken off the property. I think the two sides have agreed, outside of this hearing, to how to resolve their differences. So my understanding from talking to the applicant is that the two parties have reached an agreement with parking placards that would identify who is allowed to park in that facility, and they could distinguish somebody who's not from somebody who has a placard on their car or a seal. The staff, like I said, had no concerns. There was no opposition. No one supporting the request. The Planning Commission found that the proposed use did satisfy the golden criteria and would be appropriate in a senior living development such as Aldersgate. And for that reason, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 5-0 to approve the request, or to recommend approval of the request, subject to a Class A drainage plan and the submittal of code footprints to the fire district or the fire marshal, the state fire marshal, if that was necessary. Are you happy to answer any questions now or after you've conducted your public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second? Second. Motion made to open public hearing by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0. Are there any questions for the planning director before we take any public comment? Great. Rippon?
I have a question. That parking lot, is there going to be a landscape buffer between the parking lot and the school?
Is Angela here?
Yes, please come on up. And when you come up, if you could say your name so that the clerk can properly record that too.
Good morning. I'm Jerry Nye. I'm the CEO at Aldersgate Village and know a little bit about this project. You asked about a landscape buffer and things like that. In our discussions with USD 437, which, by the way, have been completely cooperative and in good faith, we've kind of agreed that having a landscape buffer would be detrimental to what they're trying to accomplish with safety of the kids. And so, of course, we're completely, as a great neighbor, want to be doing everything we can for the safety. And have a landscape buffer would just provide additional cover for a bad person if they had intent to do harm on the children. And so we've kind of agreed not to do that. And in fact, what we've agreed to do as Aldersgate is on the back part of that parking lot, we haven't quite gotten to the design stage where we can locate those exactly. But we've agreed to a couple of light poles that we will outfit with 110-volt electricity and allow the school to mount, even though it'll be on our property, but allow the school to mount cameras in two different locations that will look down those fence lines, and they can check for any kind of a distraction or anything like that every day or every recess period if they like. So that's one of the reasons why we don't have a landscape thing planned. They want that eyesight. And then also the residents that we have in our affordable living complex that we're going to build are going to be great ambassadors and watchdogs for those kids. So not having a landscape there is kind of by design.
Any other questions? All right. While you're here, take any public comment from persons in favor of the proposal. Mr. Nye, is there anything additional that you want to add?
I just want to thank Randy for all his help, and Angela Sharp has been terrific in getting us where we are on this planned unit development approval. This is going to be a great project. Two assisted living type buildings we call Home Plus, really popular and needed in the community. And this attainable housing complex that we're building is going to be smartly designed and really a benefit to the community to bring into elderly housing an affordability option for many people. So we just thank you for your consideration this morning with the commissioners, and we look forward to rocking and rolling with this project.
All right. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other individuals wanting to speak in favor of the proposal? Seeing none, are there any individuals wanting to speak in opposition to the project? Seeing none, pleasure of the commissioners.
I would move that we close the public hearing and approve the PUD.
Motion to close and adopt the PUD by Commissioner Mays. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next item, I would note that at the Planning Commission on that same day, there was a second item that was considered by the Planning Commission. However, it's my understanding that that request has been withdrawn and so would not be considered by the county commissioners. I'm just noting that for record. Okay? Our next item.
Item C, Public Works, number 1, consider authorization and execution of contract C379-2021 Design Services Agreement with SBB Engineering LLC to develop bidding plans and specifications for the Southeast Croco Road pavement replacement, I-470 KTA Bridge to I-70 Bridge northbound lanes at a cost of $38,424, utilizing Public Works operating funds.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Niehaus, Director of Public Works. Back on October 15th, I came before you with a request to solicit proposals for design work on a project to remove some concrete pavement on Croco Road between two bridges, one over the Turnpike, one over I-70. We received 4 responses from interested parties. All of them were great. In the end, though, the selection committee selected the firm headed by SBB, Smith, Beck, and Boyd. And so I'm here before you asking you to approve that selection through your authorization and execution of a contract in the amount of $38,424, which covers design and construction engineering. Construction engineering is essentially inspection. Questions?
Kurt, in 2020, we did a mill and overlay on Croco Road from the 470 down to 29th Street. And so this would be the portion of the road that is just to the east of what we completed in 2020?
Just to the north.
Just north,
Yeah.
sorry, just
Yeah.
north of what we
Yeah.
completed in 2020?
Correct.
Okay. And this is a concrete as opposed to that portion that we did, which was already asphalt?
Yeah, further south what we did, it was already asphalt. We just milled and put an overlay or an inlay down. Here we have concrete pavement. And so we're going to have kind of an option where you can, the contractor can either bid for a concrete pavement replacement, or they can bid to replace the concrete pavement with asphalt pavement. There's a geotechnical company involved with SBB, and the reason for that is the base, the sub-base will have to be manipulated depending on the option. So that's why we have a geotechnical engineer involved.
And then do we have a time frame as to when this project would be started or ended?
I have a preferred time frame. It's next spring. I would like to do it. The problem is I have to see how much this will potentially cost before I decide to move forward at this time. Nevertheless, the work that we're doing here that I'm asking for approval will not go to waste. At some point in time, when the money's available and the time is right, we'll get the work done.
Any other questions from Mr. Niehaus? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the contract.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Our next item.
Item D, Parks and Recreation, number 1, consider authorization and execution of contract C382-2021, amendment number 2 to contract C198-2017 with Topeka Community Clyde Project.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Hold it,
No.
I mean cycle. That's what I get for missing one meeting. I don't know who Clyde is. Topeka Community Cycle Project for the mowing of locations up to Central Park Community Center, and to extend the agreement through the March 2025 with TCCP to pay $2,500 annually to be deposited into the Parks and Recreation Building Maintenance Fund for trail improvements.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Luby, Parks and Recreation. Sorry to interrupt you, Cindy.
That's
Didn't
right.
mean to do that. For the ones that aren't familiar with this, the Topeka Community Cycle Project, we've been partners with them for several years. They were located in, or are located in, our Oakland Community Center. But however, Andy Fry, who is here, was wanting to be more centrally located to reach more kids and improve the program, and that's what we're doing today. I do have Andy Fry here. If he'd like to say a few words about the program, that'd be great.
Mr. Fry, yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit more about the Topeka's Community Cycle Project, what you've been doing and moving from Oakland to Central Park.
So Andy Fry, Topeka Community Cycle Project. We've been in existence since 2009. We were downtown originally, and then 4 years ago we had the opportunity to partner with Parks and Rec and move to the Oakland Community Center. We offer the opportunity for folks to come in and work on their own bike or learn how to work on bikes. They can also earn a bike from volunteering. And we're just there to be a resource in terms of bicycling and connecting people to resources, whether it's showing them how to ride, showing them how to work on their bike, connecting them to other groups that are doing rides, that sort of thing. So we're looking forward to moving to Central Park to try to be a little more accessible in terms of all the user groups and demographics that come to seek us out. There are some folks, many folks that seek us out that don't have access to any transportation, so being a little more centrally located will help enable them to reach us. So happy to answer any questions, but just really appreciate the partnership with Parks and Rec.
Couple of things. Are you still looking to take bikes if people have bikes that they aren't using and would like to donate?
Yeah, we're always willing to take bicycles when we're open, and we're open Thursdays 5 to 7 and Saturdays 10 to 1. We will obviously have a bit of a delay in our moving process, in which we probably won't take bikes for a few weeks, but on an ongoing basis, yes.
And if people are looking for a place to buy a bicycle, is this a place where they can buy one?
We have limited amount of bikes that some of them are donated that are nicer ones that may not be as desirable for the general public to ride. And then, we always point folks to our commercial shops too, because we see them as partners in the community as well.
And then finally, can you talk a little bit about how to earn a bike? That's one of your projects that you do through the programming, and I think it doesn't get a lot of highlights.
Yeah. Through COVID, we've kind of just allowed folks to come in and get bikes, but typically our process is that folks can volunteer for 5 hours helping with different projects, whether it's working on bikes or helping us clean up shop, just kind of keeping the shop sustainable. And that's how we've been able to exist for 10 plus years with minimal income. And so yeah, folks can come in and learn more while working on bikes and while building up their own bike prior to leaving with one.
Great. And then by having it at the Central Community Center, are you thinking that you would have more community impact and more people that are able to access the services?
Correct. Yeah, I think being previously in downtown, we were kind of in a crossroads space of people coming across town, and similarly, we think Central Park can offer that to us. And being in the midst of the neighborhood, being not too far from Washburn and 17th Street, it just should be a good. And also, there's other programs going on in Central Park Community Center with, what's the group? Omni Circle. They're doing some stuff over there as well, and so I think there's a lot of potential for crossover and good partnerships.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Fry or Mr. Luby? No. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Mays. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0. Our next item.
Item D2, consider approval of request to award a bid to Ace Electric Jones Company to replace the center light pole and fixtures at the Lake Shawnee Tennis Facility utilizing $9,300 from the Building Maintenance 3R Fund and authorization and execution of contract C381-2021 for same.
Good morning, Commissioners. Randy Luby, Parks and Recreation. If you recall, a few weeks ago, you gave us approval to go out for bid for this project. This is the one light pole that was leaning pretty bad right in the middle of our complex, and we thought for safety reasons we need to replace that, and that is the project before you. We have Ace Electric was the low and most responsive bidder, and we've very familiar with them and been very pleased with their work. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Randy, are we looking at upgrading this to an LED light?
Not at this time, mainly because all the other lights are not LED, and the tennis players prefer to have everything the same. Eventually, we are going to look at replacing everything, lighting down there, but that isn't in the plans right now.
Okay, is this going to be a wooden pole or a steel pole? Or?
Steel pole.
Would it be able to convert to an LED in the future at a lesser cost?
I believe so, yes.
Any other questions? Okay.
I'll move for approval.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Rippon,
Second.
second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Our next item.
Item E, Health Department, number 1, consider approval to accept the Kansas Department of Health and Environment Local Health Department Immunization Action Plan Supplemental 3 and Supplemental 4 awards to assist with COVID-19 response and recovery efforts for a total of $445,000.
Morning, Commissioners. Derek Flerlog, Infectious Disease Manager for the Health Department. I'm sweating because it's a mild November day, not because I'm nervous, I promise you that. Here to ask for your approval to accept what we call the IAP Supplemental 3 and 4 grant funds for $445,000 from KDHE. These funds, as kind of outlined in our application, some of them are retroactive and will cover the cost of our mass vaccination rental clinic to January. And then moving forward, we're looking to use it for staffing needs, contracted staffing needs to help boost our clinic efforts as far as vaccination goes. And this applies both to COVID-19 and other vaccinations as well that we can do in the community. There's also some potential for some public health awareness campaigns if the need is there for those as well. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0. Thank you. Our next item.
Item E2, consider approval and request for signature for the new exclusive provider organization agreement, contract C380-2021 with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas to provide services for Kansas Health Insurance Exchange clients effective January 1, 2023.
Good morning, Commissioners. Teresa Fisher, Director with the Health Department. Before you today is a request to enter into this agreement with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. What they are doing is they built out a new product that will be available on the Health Insurance Network exchange for participants to be able to purchase. And so they are building that provider network. Right now, they're focusing largely on local health departments, but it will include others. And so essentially, if the provider network is built and we're able to accept this insurance, then so clients can come in for our services. It's just an additional insurance that we would be able to bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Teresa, can you talk about who would be impacted by this agreement? I mean,
Sure.
Who is the target that we're looking for?
Yeah. I think anybody who potentially would be shopping around for insurance on the Health Insurance Network exchange. And so I think typically there's always that open enrollment period and people are looking to see what insurance needs they might have, if there's something better on the exchange network that they might be able to get. And so this is just one additional offering that Blue Cross is trying to work on. It won't go into effect, you might note, until 2023, so there's still a lot of legwork to be done.
Okay. Commissioner Mays, any questions?
So this, in essence, makes us a contracting provider with them for this new product that they're offering.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so are reimbursement rates on this already agreed to, or are they yet to be negotiated?
That's a great question. My two experts are not able to be in attendance today. I might have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure if it is covered in here, if we have, it talks about it in the packet that you all received about the reimbursement
Page 3.
rates.
Bottom, section 4. 88%.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Good. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second? Motion to approve by Commissioner Mays, second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Our next item.
Item F, Department of Corrections, number 1, consider approval of request for an employee to accompany members of the Sheriff's Office to travel to New Orleans, Louisiana, December 6th to the 9th for enhancement learning of the Offender Watch System with training covered by the Sheriff's Office and meals to be covered through the detention budget.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Cole, Shawnee County Department of Corrections. This is just a request for approval to allow one of our employees, which is a sergeant in our classification division, to attend training alongside those of our partners with the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office for continued training and learning when it comes to the Offender Watch system. This is a system here that helps us when those come into jail for violent offenders, drug users, or sex offenders come in, that we work with the Sheriff's Office when it comes to getting them registered right there at the jail. This is a big part of the job in classification. In speaking with members with the Sheriff's Office and our employee, that the cost of this is covered through the Sheriff's Office, except for meals, and we'll be able to cover that. I did see Sheriff Hill or Under Sheriff Hubler here if there's any questions specific to the training, but I stand for any questions myself.
Any questions? I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0. Thank you, Brian. Our next item.
Item G, Commission, number 1, discussion of capital improvement projects for 2022 budget.
Well, Jennifer's getting everything set up. I would note that on our meeting last Thursday, the 4th, we had initial discussion of our capital outlay as well as capital improvement projects, as well as a discussion of the SPARK Committee's recommendation for the ARPA funds, and a recommendation that approximately half of the ARPA funds be used, and then setting aside half for future use, and the recommendations on that first round. So with that, we had tabled any discussion further for the ARPA funds and for today, but we did approve for the Shutter Venue Grant for Stormont Vale Event Center and Helen Hawker. We also approved small capital improvement projects of just a little less than $100,000. And so we do have in our capital outlay $90,175. $125, thank you,
Yes.
Jennifer. Left to designate from capital outlay as in addition to our discussion of the ARPA funds. So, Jennifer?
Jennifer Sauer, Audit Finance. One other small thing has happened since the last commission meeting, and that is that we did receive word that we were approved for the FEMA grant, which took $1,072,896 off of the suggested funding for the ARPA. So we were able to find alternate funding for that, freeing up some more of the ARPA money. So that is removed from this spreadsheet. So this just shows what is left behind after getting that FEMA money.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the ARPA and recommendations from the SPARK Committee and kind of what the SPARK Committee did to get to their recommendations?
Okay, so the SPARK Committee, in consultation with Whit O'Brien's, who is our consultant, started looking at what would be the best starting points for us to start looking at the award that was given to Shawnee County. And one of the spots that he suggested that we take a look at first would be the pre-existing capital improvement project requests that had already been turned into the county. So we used that as our starting point. We had some administrative costs, as you can see, that had to get taken care of first thing, which was the consultant and the admin costs for actually keeping track of all of the ARPA grant. While we were setting that up, we had some other items that needed to be addressed very quickly. So that's how the electronic poll books, the space planning for the 707 Quincy and Courthouse, as well as the DA backlog for the legal assistance got approved. What we did next was we contacted each department and asked each of the county departments to, through a survey, asking them what the needs were. at their department. And then after getting information back from the survey, we combined that with the CIP requests and asked the departments to rank each of the items that they had requested from the Spark Committee, which is how we got these designations of CT3, 1, 8, 10. That is actually the department's rankings of their projects in order. After getting all of that information went back to the Spark Committee. I hope I'm getting all of this right. This is the last few months condensed. We brought all of that information back to each of the Spark Committee members, who then ranked all of the CIP and survey requests in their specific order. We hashed those scores together and came out with an order that the committee then ranked everything down in order, 1 through 36, I think is what we started with, 36 different. You're right, 69, sorry. And then that left us with 34 or 36 that were actually recommended for the first round of funding.
Why do only half the funding now as opposed to designating all of the $34.5 million from ARPA?
There was a couple reasons. First, the committee wanted to only recommend a first section, so which is round 1, so that they could get some feedback from the committee or from the commission and see if there was something that they then wanted the committee to look at next. In addition to the fact that we don't want to allocate all of the money just immediately. We want to have a good idea of how we're going to spend the money so that we can answer for the money to the U.S. Treasury when it comes reporting time. But we don't necessarily, we want to keep some freedom so that we can address any unknown needs all the way through the end of this award period, which we have through 2024 to spend the rest of this, to spend all of the money.
Okay.
Or let me rephrase that was wrong. Through 2024 to obligate the money to be spent through 2026.
Okay. In going through the recommendations, it's been noted that there's approximately $4.2 million that is designated for Parks and Recreation, and then there's a little over $8.2 million that is designated for the courthouse building, including courtrooms, windows, mechanical, and from those two, they make up the majority of that first round.
Yes.
Can you talk to us as to what the Spark Committee was evaluating and that kind of how they broke those out or what they were looking at?
I don't know that I can really.
But maybe
let's
kind
see,
of getting into your ARPA recommendation pie chart.
Yeah, the ARPA recommendation pie chart, it actually shows how the information is broke down for reporting to the U.S. Treasury. Sorry, I'm going to go out here because I can pull that up. There is.
And I would note that these are all on the Shawnee County website for the public to view, as well as for department heads, so that if there are questions about the process and methodology.
Yes. Yes, this is all out on the Shawnee County website. If you go to the main Shawnee County snco.us website, there is a green banner that says CIP and ARPA. If you click there, it brings you to this page. So this is how the breakdown of the first round, as suggested by ARPA, would be reported to the U.S. Treasury, and that's that 50% of the money would be allocated for public health. 40% of the money would be allocated for negative economic impacts, 1% on infrastructure, 2% on revenue replacement, and right now the percentage for administrative is kind of heavy because it's all front-loaded, so that's our 7% for administrative.
And then how do we define public health and negative impact, negative economic impact?
Public health, those are classifications that the U.S. Treasury uses. Public health covers many of the items that would have to do with social distancing. So the courts, all of the remodel of the courthouse and the courts. because one of the main issues that we are having through the DA's office in the courts and the administrative offices in the courthouse is that we struggle to maintain the correct social distancing that you would really need for COVID. So that created the need for extra space, which caused 707. So all of that remodel and all of that falls in under the public health category, I believe. The negative economic impacts, most of the Parks and Rec projects fall under that category. That is how the U.S. Treasury has, I can't necessarily give you the reasons behind it, but that is how the U.S. Treasury has them classified.
Okay. Then if we can go back to the recommendations and just kind of the overall, if we can just go through what projects were listed
Yep.
for approval.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to summarize all the courtroom costs together. I know it also includes some gallery seating and podiums, which the short story on that is as things were removed for COVID spacing, they went to put the seating back together, and it was old enough that, as you guys know, whenever you take furniture apart, when it goes back together the second and third time, it does not quite go back together the same way. And that's the issue that the courtrooms found themselves in. So there's also audio-visual technology upgrades. So all of that together with all the courtroom renovations comes to $2.2 million, $2,246,120.
Okay. Before we move on, our court administrator, Lee Welch, or Chief Judge Anderson, do either of you want to talk about the courtroom projects or add anything additional?
I'll let Judge speak so we can get back to the bench.
I'm Richard Anderson, Chief Judge here in the 3rd Judicial District. I know there's been a lot of planning, thought, doing formulas and figuring out how to make these requests. I just want to emphasize that most of our request is like a pre-existing condition. We know that these projects need to go forward at some point. We've had some additional complications with some of the COVID requirements that exist and challenge us even to this very, very day. So these are very much needed projects, and when Arpa funds were put at issue, that seemed to the court to be a very good, logical way to address these concerns and beneficial even to the county taxpayers and using those kinds of formulas. LeDon Welch, our court administrator, can talk about some of the particulars of the projects. If that is the focus of any questions you might have, I can talk about or try to answer any of the other questions you might have. Do you have any particular questions?
We have recommendations for 3, 5, 8 courtrooms to be renovated. Beginning about 5 to 6 years ago, we started doing courtroom renovations, and so far we have renovated 4 of the courtrooms for the courthouse. With the addition of these, this will almost complete the full renovation of all the courtrooms. Are there any concerns with taking on this many courtrooms at one time or as a bulk project for the operations of the court?
Well, of course, the architects have been in communication with us and on planning. It will be disruptive always to have courtrooms down, construction in process, but I believe a sensible approach can be adopted to minimize the impact on our ongoing proceedings. I mean, it's something that really needs to be done, and there's no maybe perfect time to do it without some interruption. But I think plans are well thought through, and the disruption of our processes will be as low or as minimal as possible.
Okay. We haven't touched on it yet, but with the purchase of 707 Quincy and the 5 different areas departing from this building to there, we were looking at the addition of some renovations for a jury room, and is that still a needed priority for the courts?
It is. As You know, with your business, our business is constantly changing. We have large groups of people congregating out in the halls. Our jurors, not ideal circumstances when you have victims' families, defendants' families, jurors in close proximity. So a jury room for gathering would be very, very helpful and very conducive to making the quality of our work better. So things like that are really necessary. We are getting crunched with space. You may or may not know that we've made application through the state budget for addition of 2 judges. They did a survey in 2019, work study. Our caseloads are higher than anybody per judge. I know we've mentioned that before. But if we get some additional staffing, again, more space is needed. So we're looking ahead, trying to anticipate our needs. The courtroom improvements are absolutely essential for us to be able to do our business that is constantly changing. As you know, we've had to apply technology in a lot of different ways to how we do our work.
So with that, if the Office of Judicial Administration was to determine that there was a need for additional judges for Shawnee County, they would make that decision, and then the Shawnee County Commissioners would need to allocate the space for that.
Possibly, yes.
Okay. And that we're anticipating and looking forward that that may happen at some point in the future.
Yes. It will be a budget request this year to the legislature. Of course, you don't know what the legislature may do with it, but if we get the relief and get the staffing, that will be very important to us and it will help us do our business.
Questions for Chief Judge Anderson? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I might just ask one question of our Court Administrator Welch. The audiovisual technology upgrades of a budget of $160,000, does that still appear to be a reasonable amount, or is that low, high?
Lee Welch, Court Administrator, 3rd Judicial District. I believe that's a pretty accurate number. If anything, it might be a little low. Due to the nature of our hearings, since the pandemic began, we're doing more and more Zoom hearings. We do have electronic capabilities with the Department of Corrections. Many of our attorneys are calling in. We do have our state hospital at Osawatomie. We do all of their hearings remotely. So there is an ongoing need, and that number is a ballpark number that we had initially. Some of the courtrooms that are slated to be upgraded, the technology aspect is already built into those numbers. So the $160,000 would be picking up the courtrooms that aren't scheduled for renovation, which would be the basement courtrooms, and any other accessory needs that come up along the way.
Okay. Any questions for the Court Administrator?
Not necessarily, I don't know, maybe you want to answer it, but we've got approximately $2.25 million worth of courtroom renovations. On this current worksheet, we've got them split out into individual items. Would it be beneficial to just combine them into one item that's just $2.25 million for courtroom renovations? I mean, would it be easier to bid rather than bidding each individual project? Maybe find one contractor that would bid on all of them at the same time?
The numbers that are used are basically the bids that we had previously from KBS Contractors as well as Triner HL. What we did was I talked with KBS and Triner before submitting these numbers, and we added a blanket 15% to their prior bid for increased costs of materials, services, et cetera. It may be worthwhile to do it in total. I did speak with the vice president of KBS when they were in the building last week and suggested, we're talking right now of the 2020 CIP funding covered 2 courtrooms on the 3rd floor. And they're going to start those after the first of the year. So I talked to them about the addition of this $2.25 million worth of courtroom renovations and asked if they could what kind of a deal can you give me for, $2.5, almost $2.75 million worth of work over the next 5 years? And they were going to go back and put pencil to paper and see what kind of any sort of discount or concessions they could make for not having to relocate materials and staff for a large job like this.
Okay.
Thank you. Jumping ahead just a little bit, and I hate to take things out of order, but again, being wary of the Chief Judge's time, under facility management, there was listed approximately $1.3 million for window replacement and then $3 million for mechanical for the courthouse building. As a Chief Judge, do you want to speak on how important those windows and mechanical may be to the operations of the court? Or some of the difficulties the court endures?
Yes, Richard Anderson again, Chief Judge. We have, an overwhelming need, and I don't know if you know parts of it, but we've got some problems with our heating and cooling. For instance, the office I locate up on the 4th floor is tremendously cold. It feels like a meat locker. We have other offices. One of our divisions has mold, so we've got some leakage from windows and a variety of things that really need to be prepared and repaired in that way. Is there a specific thing that you would like me to
Well,
address?
I know that in speaking with Nelda Henning, the facility manager of the courthouse or of Shawnee County, these are the original windows to the building, and she's advocated very forcefully that we need to change these windows, that they are not efficient, and that we are losing a lot of the ability to heat and cool our building just from these windows alone. So does the heat and the cold, how does that impact the operations?
Oh, it affects how you work. It affects your jurors. It affects everybody if they're uncomfortable. There isn't a day that doesn't go by without somebody sending me a text, an email, or catch me in the hall and complain about the conditions, the comfort level in the building. And, I personally believe I'm tough, so I don't complain too much, but it is noticeable, and it makes it hard for some to work. And that's just it. That's not an ideal situation. And, I hit my head with my hand because I grew up in a construction environment when I was practicing law. And it's going to be a major undertaking, but it's one that is necessary now. And so it's very important.
I know in speaking with the district attorney, he's mentioned concern from their perspective that if a juror is not able to hear the evidence due to outside noise, or if they're not able to be comfortable, if they're too hot or too cold, it may have an impact on jury trials or could even cause a mistrial. Does that concern you as a chief judge?
Well, as a judge doing a jury trial, absolutely, because you have a moment when a case is presented. We've got one that's lasted over a week right now. And one little thing can make it go awry. If you have a juror that, would complain about the comfort, or I can't hear, those kinds of things make an impact and may cause what we call a mistrial, which makes it so that we have to do the case again. So, we all want this building to be comfortable for everybody. I know that's, the commission shares that view, the court shares that view. We have some challenges that need to be addressed. That's just how I'm looking at it right now.
So from your perspective, again, we are looking at renovating a number of courtrooms. Would you think that the heating and cooling in the windows being pretty important too for the operations of the courthouse?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And again, Commissioners, I'm sorry taking things a little bit out of order, but also while we have the court here to talk about how the facility impacts the operations. Any questions on those two items? No. All right. Thank you. We're going to go on to the next grouping.
Yes. Okay, the detention facility brought a couple of needs to the committee's attention, and that was the replacement of the HVAC system at the DOC annex and a detainee body scanner, and those two equal $1 million exactly. The Elections Department brought in a non-CIP item of needing to have poll place sanitation and cleaning. This is driven by the actual poll places that they use for the elections. There's concern from those sites about sanitization, and they're trying to make sure that they can retain the poll places that they currently contract with.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, if we could go back up to the Department of Corrections. Commissioner
Yes.
Mays, you raised on Thursday a concern about the replacement of the roof at the Department of Corrections, which was $600,000, and a concern as to why that might not be on this first round
Right.
as a critical infrastructure need for the Department of Corrections. Do you still have that concern?
I still do. I think it is an appropriate use of funds to put that on the ARPA funds. And quite frankly, I think the boiler replacements would be right up there with the HVAC, in my opinion. So, I mean, that's another thing that we probably ought to consider as well. But just neither of those were requested,
Correct.
which is why they weren't graded as everything else was. And so, had they been requested, I would hope that they would have been included on this list in the final recommendations.
And so for clarification, when we say the word requested, there was a capital outlay request, but it was not under the ARPA request.
Correct.
And so, again, I just want to make sure that for those that are following along and those present in the room, when we talk about what was requested and what was not, it was part of the capital outlay request, but what did not transition over to the ARPA request. Is that correct?
Correct. It was not brought before the committee.
Correct. Yes.
Director Cole, do you want to speak on just, again, the boiler and the roof replacement and why those weren't brought forward to the ARPA, or?
Absolutely. The roofing was part of a, last year was part of a phase 1 and a phase 2 issue. So when last year, instead of going into like a $1.1 million request, I think half of it was looked at, and then there was discussion last year of that phase 2 would go into this next year. So number one, there was that thought. Number two, I wasn't sure if it would even qualify. So it wasn't put in there. Wasn't a lack of due diligence on anybody else's part. Trust me when I say that, or the Sparks Committee. I just didn't think, to be honest with you, I thought means it was a phase 1 and a phase 2 thing, that it didn't need to be addressed through the ARPA. And again, I just didn't know. As far as the boilers go, again, it was one of those things where I just didn't know, and we have to replace. These are different size boilers. They are infrastructure things that have to do with the HVAC system and the heating and cooling and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, it never crossed my mind that they would be that they would qualify. Again, I'll take full responsibility. I didn't ask, but that's the best answer I could come up with.
Any questions for the director? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, and I believe we were down to, and again, I apologize for interrupting, we were at the EOC renovations for emergency management.
Yes. So emergency management brought forth 2 items. One was the EOC renovations of the bathroom area down in both female and male bathrooms down in the sub-basement of the courthouse. And also a mobile communications unit that both the Emergency Management and Sheriff's Office originally presented to the commissioners during their budget talks. After that, it would be the facilities items, and I think you've talked about a couple of, them. These 4 items for the courthouse or for facilities total $5,850,000, and that is for the mechanical system replacement of the courthouse lighting upgrades to LED, the courthouse replacement windows, and building improvements and modifications that are due to the space planning between 707 Quincy and the courthouse, including the courthouse's west entrance, which has some repairs that need to be made to it. Oh. And the $1.1 million is completely preliminary, that we just went out to get some bids on that. It was the best guess at the time.
Questions on any of those items?
Yes.
Yes.
Nelda, would you be willing to speak a bit on what exactly mechanical systems replacement means for the courthouse?
Well, I'm still learning, but we have some air handlers that are not functioning at their optimum, mainly due to their age. I'm going to expect that over the next 5 years they'll age out. We have cooling towers there again that are not working at their optimum. They are original to the building also, and I expect in the next 5 years they will age out. We did replace the boilers, I believe it was about 10 years ago. So I would like to get the rest of the systems up and working. One of the air handler units on first floor actually is leaking into the basement on a regular basis right now, and one of the leaks happens to be occurring in the surveyor's office. They have a lot of documents that we can't afford to get wet, and that seems to be an ongoing issue. So when I'm talking about replacement, I'm talking about it's going to be a pretty full on getting things fixed. Also, because of the age of the equipment, by replacing them, we should be able to save on utility costs, because newer equipment is more energy efficient than equipment that is approximately 50 years old.
So it's primarily HVAC systems?
Yes, yes,
Which seems to be a recurring theme.
yes.
Again, I guess this is sort of one of these things where it appears that just about every building we own has a need for new HVAC systems. Is there not, in an effort to simplify, a way that we could say countywide HVAC upgrade and consolidate those? Betty, Jennifer, is that even legal for us to do that under the federal guidelines, or is this something we need to talk to a consultant about?
I think for funding at this point in time, it's something that could be combined together, but we'd have to work with the consultant. And for ARPA reporting, it might be something that they would have to be separated out, even if that just means allocation. That we would have to work with the consultants on. I think for funding at this point in time, they could be consolidated, and then we could determine what can be consolidated through the consultants.
I'm just looking at this thinking, we've got so many of these little things that if we could maybe just consolidate some of these items into less things. And then I also feel like when we go out for bid, it's sometimes you get more of an economies of scale. If we bid for someone to be our HVAC replacement company for these 4 or 5 buildings, that might be a little easier for everyone than sending out each individual project.
I would comment on that as a yes and a no. Typically, your savings are in mobilization. If you're mobilizing into one area, you will save because the contractor won't charge you to demobilize and then remobilize. When you're splitting among buildings, the mobilization savings isn't really seen at that point, but that's where you're going to get your biggest savings. Design-wise, we might get a little savings by having only one consultant doing all the design work, but there again, it's in separate facilities, so they would have to analyze each facility separately. So savings might be there, but very not significant.
Nelda, while you're there, during COVID, we were able to replace the elevators in the courthouse, and it had little to no impact on the courts due to there being little to no people in the courthouse during that period of time. If we're talking about replacement of the mechanicals for the water cooler that would cool the building, are we going to try and time that so it has as least amount of impact as possible on the operations of the facility?
Yes, as of right now, the cooling towers are actually shut down for the winter. We can't run them during the winter because they have no type of heating that keeps them from freezing up, so they have to be shut down and drained. So that type of work would happen in fall to winter when it would have the least impact on the courts.
Okay. And then for the boiler at the Department of Corrections, and that would something that would occur during the summertime project?
That would be a summertime project. That would be the optimum time based on if the equipment needed to be ran during the summer to offset something. But usually during the heat of the summer, the boilers would be shut down, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. And you still advocating fiercely for those windows to be replaced?
I do want to just add a little comment. Most of the items that I have presented to you are energy savings or utility saving type items. So even with the windows, if we replace them, we estimate a 10-year payback. So we would gain on that aspect that they would pay for themselves within 10 years. And that's part of the reason why I'm advocating for these items. We have the funding, and they would save the county money in utility costs.
And I would note that there's a number of the occupants of the building, that being the courts, that have joined in your request for the replacement of the windows. And so,
Thank you.
thank you.
I did want to point out one of the ideas that has been thrown about. I don't know that it's moved forward, but with all of the projects that are slated for the courthouse, if these all got approved by the commission, I think one of the ideas was it might be a good idea to take all of the courthouse-related items out together so that there can be a coordination and a project manager that maybe would coordinate all of the different pieces, because it's going to be we have to make sure that none of the projects adversely affect the other projects.
Right. Appreciate that. Okay.
Okay, that, I believe, takes us down to the health department. They brought forward 3 items: a mobile vaccine and testing unit, 2 digital marquee signs that would be permanently placed outside of the health department locations on 10th Street and McVicker, and then a UVGI and HEPA UVGI units and HEPA fans to help with sanitization of the rooms where patients and the public are. Sorry. Ask an accountant to say other people's projects, it gets weird. HR has brought forth the COVID admin leave costs for the county.
And can we stop on that just to clarify? Is this to pay back Shawnee County for administrative leave that they've already incurred? Or is this to set aside so that if there's administrative leave needed in the future, we have a pool to draw from?
It would be both of those things.
Okay.
So, and this is one of the administrative costs that is included in that 7%. So yeah, this is, it would go back to March of this year, and it would be any costs from March forward would be eligible to be covered by Arpa funding instead of out of budgeted funding for the county.
And so if we were going back, I mean, would departments then submit their request saying, I had administrative leave that I did not? How are we going to do the accounting for past administrative leave?
It is all already logged in the payroll system. So in order to be paid COVID admin leave, there's paperwork that has to be submitted to the HR department. And it is all currently already in our HR system, just being charged against the general fund or the funding source of that employee.
And so would this money go back to the departments for their 2022 budget, or would this money go back into the general fund?
I don't know that any conversation has been had as to where it would go back yet.
All right, just to clarify, if Parks and Recreation needed to make that request for administrative leave to be brought back that they did not have, whether it goes into their because 2021 is already over, you can't.
Correct. You can't respend it, yes.
And so typically anything that's left over at the end of the year goes into the general fund. And so just trying to determine if this is going to be additional funding for 2022 or if this would go back into our general funds.
I think it could do either, but.
Yeah, that would really, that has not been determined. It could be handled either way. It could go back to the individual departments, but the departments have those employee costs, those payroll costs already budgeted for this year. The only additional they might have had was if that employee was off for a COVID leave and then they had to pay somebody overtime or pull in, intermittent or something like that, they might have had additional costs for that. But the salaries of those employees would have already been budgeted.
And I guess my concern is, if this is money that's going to go into the departments so the departments can do additional projects, that's one thing. If it's just going back into our general fund, I do have some concern in that it's my hope that we can have the ARPA funds impact our community. There's been discussion about how the money is going to be impacting, and so through courtroom renovations, we're going to be looking to hire contractors and workers that are going to be doing projects. If we're talking about improvement of parks, we're going to be hiring contractors to come in and do the work. If we're talking about, trying to keep our money, reinvesting it back into our community, if it's going into our general fund, it's not immediately reinvested back into our community. It might eventually be reinvested back into our community, but it would not have that immediate impact. And so that's just a concern I want to bring forward.
That's correct, and especially for 2021. Now, we could do something different from the future, but for 2021, it's already November. If you were to reimburse the departments at this point, it would be something they would have to spend by the end of the year, which is not, very long.
Okay.
So I don't know that it's something that would necessarily be able to be spent on projects by the different departments for this year. And that doesn't mean they couldn't in the future, but not in this year.
And Betty, while I have you there, a question that I do get asked on a regular basis is, what does Shawnee County do to try and hire local contractors when we're looking at countywide projects, not specifically ARPA, but just in general?
Well, we do not have a preference in our purchasing policy because we do feel like we need to look at all bids that we receive. Now, most of the construction bids, that type of thing, go to the professional selection committee, and as part of those discussions, there is generally a discussion about local versus outside of the area. And sometimes that, as you know, sometimes it's advantageous to have a local area or a local contractor, or especially sometimes when we're looking at purchasing, we look at the locality because of service. If it's some type of a service contract, then you want to make sure, like our copiers, for instance, you want to make sure that you can get the service you need on a regular basis. So that is looked at as part of the evaluation of the professional service committee. It's not something that is required based on our purchasing policy.
And so Shawnee County, we don't have a policy that says it must be local or it must not be local, and nor is it a must be the lowest bid, it's most qualified bid.
Right. We're trying to look for the best value for the county. We're trying to look at the best value in whatever ways. And then sometimes the best value is not the cheapest because you have to take into effect so many different aspects of some, whether it's a construction project or a purchase or whatever it is. We think that really gives us the flexibility to look at all aspects of it and what we really feel like is the best value so that we are being the best stewards of the taxpayer money.
And then either you or Jennifer, how do we let people know about these projects? Is there emails that go out? Are there postings in the newspaper? Are we asking people to sign up for a list?
Well, as you know, we have our new procurement online system now. And so we are really encouraging all vendors that will be interested in doing any work with the county to go on and sign up as a vendor. Once they get signed up as a vendor, they can pick categories that they would like to bid on, say construction or copiers. I don't know. HVAC, yeah. And then once they sign up for that, any bids that are posted in that category, they get an email that tells them of that bidding opportunity. Since this is still a new system, most times what we try to do is, in addition to posting it in our system, we try to send out emails to those vendors that we are aware of, giving them a link to this online system where they can go on and bid it. It's also posted in the, it's in the Metro News.
Okay.
So,
And
it's on our website also.
I think that's a good resource, and, hope that, more people sign up for it so that we have more opportunities for bidders.
Add anything you want to
No,
say?
definitely. That was actually one of the things I was going to talk about today. So out on the SNCO website, there is, if you are a business, we would strongly advise any business to come out and register to be one of our Shawnee County vendors. On the main page, there is a spot down here at the bottom right where it talks about purchasing bids and vendors. You can click here for more about our current bid requests and to sign up as an eligible vendor for bidding. You click on our main page and it will take you to the page that you need to go and actually register as a vendor, so that you will automatically be notified of bids and you won't get missed on any opportunities.
Okay. Sorry about that distraction.
No, that's
Going
right.
back to our list.
Okay, back to the list. We left off on HR, so IT brought.
Can I?
Oh, yes,
Oh, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Mays.
Sorry.
I don't know if it'd be from you or from HR, but could I get a more detailed description of our COVID admin leave?
I saw Angela in the wings, I believe.
Of the
If she-
use,
if
just
she-
the usage retro
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
when that policy was implemented.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was
Yes.
hearing two things.
Yes.
I don't need it right
Yeah.
this second,
Yeah.
but if, it'd be good if we could get more of a detailed breakdown of the COVID admin leave and how that's been utilized over the last year or so. So if we could get that emailed to us or something, that'd be great.
Certainly do that.
And Angela, do you want to just talk about it briefly, just over the 10,000-foot view on administrative leave? And
The 10,000-foot view would be that for last year and going into this year, we've had over 500 instances of people using admin leave. I think for last year, it was 300 and some odd, and we're keeping on pace this year. And not everybody's a full 2 weeks. Some people are 2 days, some people are full 2 weeks, and that's as far as we go, 10 full days. But some people are now on long-haul statuses. So it is something that is utilized quite a bit in the county.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I might just mention one other thing when we're discussing that. On the comments there, it says non-CIP. So we have listed this because it is an ARPA recommendation. Since it's not part of the CIP, I don't know that that's something you would want to vote on, in this process. But we felt like since it was part of the ARPA recommendation, we listed that. And there's a couple others too.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
Are you ready for me to go on?
We are ready for IT.
Okay, so IT, there were a couple items that had been previously submitted through the CIP, and that was for the network distribution switch replacements for 2021 and the Nutanix hyperconverged infrastructure platform expansion for 2021. And then one of the items that they responded to through the survey was that they had some additional needs for remote worker equipment purchases for this year for some departments that didn't get fully ramped up in remote workers equipment over 2020. The weed department brought forth one item, and that is that they have a roof repair, a roof that is in need of repair or replacement. It's currently leaking. Parks and Rec, 3 of their items were recommended for first round funding, and that was for $1 million for some park renovations, $1.2 million, which would be for phase 2 of the girls softball complex at Lake Shawnee, and then $2 million for the campground renovation, which was previously submitted to CIP as a couple of phases, but this would just be combining those into one project for the campground renovation at Lake Shawnee.
Well, Mr. Laurent, if you could, there are a number of requests that were not funded by ARPA or recommended initially on round 1. Can you speak to the ones that were recommended? Are these the priorities that you would see as the director? Are there ones that you thought maybe should have been moved higher on the list?
Tim Laurent, Parks and Recreation Director. I will tell you that of the 3 that were approved, those 3 were in our top 8 projects, so I think that we're happy that they were chosen. I don't think there's any, all of them are important, so I don't feel like any of them, I'm not upset with what was chosen, and I wouldn't try to replace one. I would just say that of the ones that weren't picked that were higher than this, probably the park roads and parking lots are the one that's the most need. You did give a little bit of funding there in the small CIP. The other items obviously are in need. Oakland Community Center renovation. It's hard for me to sit here and say that they're all important.
Okay. And then I know that we've had some ongoing discussion about taking out debt at some point for Parks and Recreation for major renovations. Are those still things that you, in your recommendations from the advisory board?
Yes, absolutely. And specifically the Family Park project, that we went through the master plan process for that, and I think that was originally discussed. And then there will be some additional funding needed to complete payment on the Deer Creek Trail. So I think those 2 items would be important.
Okay. Questions for the director?
I noticed, and this isn't with ARPA money, I know that you have the saloon down as a 2024 project in the old CIP.
And then for the clarification of those that are watching at home,
Definitely.
the saloon is for not us to go into the bar business, but for Shawnee County to add a saloon or a gathering place at Old Prairie Town.
Yes. They desperately need a facility that'll hold like 200 people. I mean, they have a lot of weddings and no receptions is what it amounts to. But anyway, I noticed that's quite a ways out. And I know they have a friends group that has raised a sizable amount of money towards that project. I'd like to see that moved up a little.
Do you know how much the Friends Group has?
They've indicated to me, anyway, that they probably can come up with 500,000. And, but I think the project as it's listed in here is very low. I don't know where this 500,000 came from that's in the request here, but I think you're looking more like a $1.5 million project.
I could speak to that a little bit. I think the $500,000 that we put in was at the time we thought would be about half of the project, but I think as we've moved forward and as things have changed,
Yeah.
I don't think it would meet half of it now.
I've kind of taken a drive by a windshield look at the project, and it looks like there's going to be some pretty good utility relocations and maybe even some parking lot adaptations that probably weren't considered to begin with, but
Agreed.
and some drainage issues, but
And it goes for those that are unfamiliar with the project, this would be placing this gathering location in the current parking lot that is just to the west of the mansion.
well, yeah, it would be west of the general store, but yes, it would be probably encroaching in on the parking lot there as well. It's west of the mansion, so, anyway.
Commissioner Mays?
Unrelated to the saloon, but the the softball field renovations at Lake Shawnee were on the list. The Dornwood renovations were not. Could you speak a little bit to that? I mean, is this a situation where maybe we need to take from one and give to the other a little bit instead of doing all of one and none of the other? Or, I mean, what's the priority of Parks and Rec there?
Right. Well, it's funny, we had those, Lake Shawnee Girls Softball Complex was number 8 on our list, and Dornwood was number 9. So we've really kind of lumped those two together in a way. I think they both need to be done, absolutely. It's a good time right now to go ahead and finish the girls' complex, because as you know, we're doing other things there as we speak. So I like that idea of actually completing it. I don't like the idea of doing it at the expense of Dornwood. I mean, Dornwood desperately needs some attention.
And Dornwood has been under renovation. We have completed half, or just a little under half of that facility, and I would like to see that completed at some point in my lifetime.
So would I.
But, I know it is also, for those, again, that are paying attention, the cost of a renovation of a baseball field may seem rather large until you realize the majority of the cost is in the excavation work.
Absolutely.
So, and having proper drainage and lighting.
Lighting.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any other questions for the Parks Director? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so back over on ARPA, we only have 2 categories left. The Sheriff's Office requested a couple of items that were previously approved to be, or acknowledged to be paid out of their general fund for 2021, and that is the ballistic vests and UPS batteries. They were approved for an item that was on the CIP, which was the Sheriff's Training Complex IT upgrades. And then the last item that was on the SPARK Committee approved list was the upgrades to the courthouse entrance security scanners, the magnetometer and the actual scanner device that both the public and the employees walk through at the courthouse.
Sheriff, Undersheriff, do you wish to speak to any of these 4 requests? Or other requests that maybe weren't listed but you feel should have been?
Shane Hubler, Shawnee County Sheriff's Office. That was kind of an open door, sir, but thank you. The training complex is, we do all of our training out there, and we've been doing a lot more remote training, getting other people in, utilizing that for other agencies. The Department of Corrections uses our training facility, other state agencies, and there's all of our law enforcement partners use that, and as we get more and more IT heavy, the ability to have those classes taught remotely and then be projected there is what we're trying to do, be more efficient in all of our hours and man hours that we put in out there. Everything here that is listed is fairly critical as we move forward. The other items that we've had, vehicles, we drive almost 2 million miles a year. And obviously, anything we can do to help our vehicle fleet is going to be advantageous to the safety of the community and that we serve. We had some other items that had previously we weren't able to come under the timeline of the last funding through COVID relief that, to be perfectly honest, we just missed getting through. And hopefully those will be considered by the committee as we move forward. But I'd be happy to answer any questions on these items or anything else.
Under your capital outlay, you had listed replacement of non-Tahoes at $436,000 a year as an ongoing expense for every year.
Yes, sir.
And with the current supply line chain delays and getting new vehicles, is this even going to be possible for us to get Tahoes this year?
The sheriff and I were just at a conference last week and talking to some of the vendors there, specifically Ford Motor Company. They said that they are building their 2022s right now. So we're getting conflicting information depending on what party you happen to be speaking with at one time. We had previously got information that 2022s wouldn't be available until the end of 2022. But some of the discussions that we had last week indicated they thought they would be either Q1 or Q2, first or second quarter of 22 that they might be available. I don't think anybody really knows.
By not getting these new vehicles, are we going to be able to continue with operations of our fleet, but maybe at longer mileage than we would have in the past?
What we've found is as we push our mileage past, what we try and do is we have approximately 50 vehicles that are in our patrol unit. And those are the vehicles that are responding to emergency calls on a daily basis. We have tried to keep those vehicles under 100,000 miles. And as we move forward and we don't get the replacements in a timely fashion, our repair costs are driven up. Transmissions, engine replacements, all those are high dollar replacements that have to take place. And then we have to keep that vehicle even longer to hopefully recoup some of those costs. So anything that we can do to keep those vehicles down to a reasonable mileage. Most law enforcement agencies, I shouldn't say most, a lot of law enforcement agencies try and keep that mileage on their first vehicles between 60 and 80,000. It's just been our hope that we can keep it under 100.
Questions for the undersheriff? Or
yes, I'm sorry, I didn't touch on the mobile communication vehicle. That this vehicle, I think everybody's fairly aware, is a vehicle that was originally several years ago purchased by the city of Topeka, and they're getting rid of it. One of the great advantages to this vehicle is the ability in a natural disaster or in some public safety issue later on where radio towers are taken down. This vehicle can actually go out remotely on site and essentially be a mobile tower, and our dispatchers can be in the vehicle and dispatch from that piece. I can't speak at it in great detail. I know if Nelson had any other things he wanted to add on, but it is absolutely it would be critical in a major incident that we have that availability of that vehicle.
questions? Nope. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure where you would like for me to go from next.
The remainder of the outline are projects that were unfunded through the ARPA.
Yes.
And these were, again, projects that were submitted by the departments to the SPARK Committee for consideration.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, DOC has a $17 million project for inmate processing through their Sallyport. I believe it's been called a couple different things, but they also have a $10 million project, which would be a mental health housing extension that they were looking at installing vertically over at the DOC. The elections office had a couple other items, one for a Quadient bulk mail equipment, and one that was a non-CIP item for COVID prevention mail notifications. There was a fifth election item that was reviewed by the committee, and they have currently voted a no on that one. That was another CIP item, but it's not listed here at all because it's no longer being considered. Facilities asked for touchless bathrooms at the North Annex. In full disclosure, I don't believe facilities asked for that. It was a request made by the North Annex through the survey, but facilities adopted it due to its nature. A courthouse UTV, which would be a piece of equipment that could be used here at the courthouse for snow management as well as delivery of items between the courthouse and 707 Quincy. LED lighting for the Maynard Conference Center. Parking lot, mill and overlays, and curb gutter replacements at various lots throughout the county facilities. And roofing replacements and exterior waterproofing at various locations throughout the county facilities. HR had an item to eliminate perfect attendance or sick leave bonus plans, which was another non-CIP item. Weed department had a parking and storage lot rehabilitation item. Parks and Rec had several more items. I will just kind of list those off. One for their fleet shop, one for some parks maintenance equipment replacements, sidewalk and trail enhancements, the Dornwood Park field renovation phase 2, the mini train replacement, the ADA transition plan implementation, the Lake Shawnee dock replacements, the sport court resurfacing, parking lots and road resurfacing over the next couple of years, Oakland Community Center renovation, the Lake Shawnee shop office maintenance facility replacements, and the Cypress Ridge Club house. The sheriff's office had a few items that were listed, and that was 2021's costs for upfitting and striping new vehicles, replacement non-Tahoes, nice spelling there, the auto leases for the sheriff's office. The Stormont Vale Event Center had items of wayfinding signage and parking lot signage, a party platform inside Landon Arena, the Ag Hall Foundation and HVAC repairs, Heritage Hall HVAC repair, window and door, fencing, seating replacement, and paint. And then the final item was for some portable chairs for Landon and Exhibition Hall in the event center. So that's approximately $48 million worth of unfunded items that were submitted already. And as the sheriff's office mentioned, they have brought forth a couple items that they did not submit that they are going to ask the SPARK committee to consider.
Commissioners, in review and preparation for today, it appears that we have 3 decisions that we would need to make initially. The first decision is whether or not we would want to commit half of the ARPA monies now, as recommended by the SPARK committee, reserving half for future projects, or some portion, maybe not half exactly, but reserving some for future projects, some for now. That would be the first decision we would need to make. The second decision is what projects would be approved through the ARPA for round 1. The third decision would be from our capital outlay for 2022, what we would fund with the $900,125 remaining in that budget for 2022. So tackling those one at a time, if we could have a discussion, do we want to commit all of the ARPA monies at one time? Do we want to commit a portion now with portion to be for future projects? Thoughts?
I think it's good to split the money, but I do like the proposal Commissioner May said about maybe bundling some of the courtroom projects. And I don't know if that would affect where the middle is in all this. I don't know. You know, you never know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And that's a lot to bite off. That's a lot of projects. So I don't know.
Commissioner Mays?
Yeah, so if my math is correct, we've got about $17 million so far that has actually been paid to us. Is that, we've only received half of it.
We have physically received 50% of the money.
So probably wouldn't be wise of us to spend the other half without knowing that we're going to get it.
Well,
Without having actually received it.
there's a couple of philosophies on that, I can tell you. One philosophy is it's the same philosophy that was in place with CRF money. If you show that you have a plan for it, there is less likelihood of you not getting it.
Okay.
But the plan does not have to, the plan is fluid. So if there's a plan for it, that is what Widow Bryant's has advised us, is that at least there should be a loose plan in place for that very reason. Because if you are saying you only have $16 million worth of need, it may be interpreted as you don't need the other $18 million. March? Yes. Summertime would be whenever the second 50% is slotted to come to us.
is this not considered a plan in itself, or,
No.
okay.
No, because this would say we were spending $31 million over what was given to us, unfortunately.
That's good.
All right. So, Commissioner Mays?
So I'm not texting, I'm adding things up on my calculator, just so you guys know.
And that's a good note. I've had my phone out and running calculations at the same, so.
Yes.
And Jennifer can add anything you
Yeah.
So if we were to consolidate some things on here, should we just put everything courthouse related into one category? Or should we separate that out by facilities management or by the court administration? What would be your preference?
Well, and again, in going through, it appeared that there was roughly $8.2 million of money that was designated for this building, whether it was in the courtrooms, in the physical, mechanical, the windows, and also in the renovation from us exiting this building and going to 707 Quincy.
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer, if you want to check my math,
Mm-hmm. That's
that would probably be the best.
Did that also include the LED up?
Yes,
upgrade? Okay.
yes.
I am pulling that in at the same time. Yes, my number is $8,250,870. That includes the EOS. Yes. That, I don't know if you want to include the 19 or not. That it would be $8,230,000 without that.
What was that number again?
$8,230,000.
So,
And Commissioner Mays, I believe your question is, if we bid out all of the courtrooms to one contractor as a bid, would there be a savings by the contractor designing 7 courtrooms at one time as opposed to a courtroom at a time? And I think that was your question.
yeah, I mean, I know this isn't like a home improvement project, but, if you're gonna renovate your house, you don't hire a different contractor to do the toilet than to do the sink and to do the shower, I mean, you bid
Yes.
it out all at once.
This isn't necessarily for the bidding. This is for the allocation of the money for the project that would include this.
Right, but I
Yes.
just feel like maybe more of a holistic approach would be better than piecemeal. And, I know that when you lump it together, $8.23 million sounds like a lot of money. But, when you look at Johnson County just spent $190 million
Yes.
on a new courthouse, and these improvements might buy us another 10 to 20 years in this building. I think it's money well spent.
And
I'm just trying to get the most bang for our buck, and
would it be beneficial for Betty and Jennifer Lee Dawn if the court administration was to contact KBS, who was our prior contractor for renovations, as to changes in the market and what they would see in anticipation of being able to do multiple courtrooms at one time? Is that
Yes.
something that they could do and maybe report back to us?
I think we have already made that request of them. Yes. And so we are waiting to hear back from them on that.
Let me also mention that this is just for the funding. This is not, any bids would still have to, you would still have to come to you for any of those. And then, especially if we are not going to allocate all of the ARPA funds, any adjustments could be made later.
Okay.
If we come back and find out after it goes out for bid, it's higher. I especially think the 1.1 million for 707 and the courthouse renovations, my guess is that those are too low. So I think we will have to have some adjustments probably anyway, come back to you with some adjustments.
But overall, if we're waiting for, and again, There is no preference for any contractor.
No.
And the purpose in contracting or contacting them is just to gain information about the market
Correct.
and any changes they have seen in the market as a prior contractor.
Yes, it would just be, we know how much it added together piecemeal, and then the request was how much would it add together if it was all done together, just for comparison's sake, to see if that would be a savings of 10% or 15% in general.
Okay. And in the same way, if we were talking about replacement of multiple HVA systems at one time, Commissioner Mays, whether or not, and I know that we're talking about different types of HVAC for different types of buildings, whether or not there's any savings in doing that. And as the facility manager, is that something that we would be able to get information on fairly quickly? I see some possible affirmation. No possible affirmation.
I think we can at least make an attempt
Okay.
to find out that information. Yeah. As Betty said, it depends on how quickly you're wanting the information back.
But going back to, if we've only received half the money, we would not, Commissioner Mays, want to make expenditures earmarked specifically for more than half, but have those maybe future costs allocated or some plan? Is that, I'm seeing affirmation from our audit finances to that's what the Spark Committee would want.
Which I, and I agree that that's something that we probably need to do. I don't know that that's the conversation we should be having today, though.
Okay.
I
Well,
think.
and I think the Spark Committee intends to come back with recommendation for the remaining amount of that money, or at least a broad plan for the, as a recommendation. This was, as Jennifer said, to get things started, to get things going, to start using this first half of the money that we've received, and also to try to start impacting our economy here.
Right. And I look at, if we are looking at making changes to the recommendations, the committee would need to take those changes into account when looking at round two.
Right, yes.
So, procedurally, how do you want to proceed with this? Are we going to go through here line by line and approve or deny each request? I don't think it's appropriate for us to just accept everything as it was presented necessarily. But I mean, you're the chair, so what's your preference here?
There's no meeting on Thursday, and our meeting on Monday is relatively short, as we are meeting as the Board of County Canvassers to certify the election result. Our next full meeting is on November the 18th. I would like to be able to have the capital outlay wrapped up relatively quickly so that we can have our budget finalized as the capital outlay for 2022. Well, we can't get to the capital outlay budget until we've gone through the ARPA money. By having major discussion on the 18th, that would allow our courts and facilities to go back and looking at grouping some of these projects to see if that might impact the bids or estimates, rather, that they had already put together. And so it may be beneficial for us to look at further discussion or tabling this till the 18th to come up with the 18th being a date that we would set out our ARPA for round one, finalized schedule, and then finalizing the capital outlay for 2022. And that's just a thought.
And I think that's a pretty decent approach. Are there certain things that we should go ahead and just do to kind of get out of the, are there things that we all are going to agree on, do we think, that, perhaps we could go ahead and do today and then keep some of those bigger items? I look at this and I think, okay, well, the emergency management, the communications vehicle is something that, I think needs to happen sooner rather than later. Do we approve that?
Sure.
Their bathroom renovations are needed, but that would go under courthouse renovation, so I think we'd put that one off,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, so.
And let me also let you just interject here, and I think you guys know this, but I want to make it clear. For the ARPA funded items, those items do not need to wait till 2022 to begin the purchase. They would still need to follow normal purchasing guidelines, but those could actually qualify as 2021 purchases and begin, as Betty said, getting the money out flowing anytime.
Well, and I think that we also have to look at maybe adding on the 18th, if there's items that we want to see added, such as the Department of Corrections roof, the Department of Corrections boiler, being added to the ARPA funds, or if there are any other departments that maybe we see as a capital outlay that we want to shift over to an ARPA.
And if you guys want to tell me what items you want me to switch over to that, I can do that and have it prepared for your next meeting if you
And
want
we
to
would
do
meet
that.
with you individually, maybe looking at that.
Okay.
Let's go down to the bottom, under the sheriff. The 4 items that the sheriff has,
Yes.
I don't know that I have any disagreement with those 4 items being appropriate for the ARPA. That being the ballistic vest, UPS batteries, the training complex upgrade for IT, and the courthouse entrance scanner, security scanner upgrades. So I'll make a motion to add those 4 as approved for ARPA funds.
I completely agree, those are all very necessary, I would second that motion.
Okay.
That'd be good.
So we'll move those 4 as being approved for ARPA. Moving up to the IT, there are 2 items, that being the network distribution switch replacement and the Nutanix hyper-converged infrastructure platform expansion. That wasn't so hard to say, Ms. Beck. Add it, and then the, I guess 3 items, and the remote worker equipment purchases. I would move to approve those 3 for ARPA.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? So motion made for those 3 and for the, I guess, and Ms. Beck, before she stops me, motion to approve those 3 in addition to approving the prior 4,
Okay.
passing 3-0.
I was waiting for see that.
Thank you, Ms. Beck.
Okay.
The Health Department has 3 items. Are there any questions or concerns about those 3 items?
This mobile vaccination and testing unit. Have we had anything like that in the past? Is this something entirely new?
Teresa Fisher, Director of the Health Department. This would be something new. We have actually applied for this for 2 or 3 other grants through the state and been denied. And so this is still something that we feel would be very helpful. We know that there's a vaccine equitableness here in our community, and so finding places that people can get to, whether it's on a bus route. We're also, we struggle with working with community partners to make sure that we can have access to their building, things of that sort. So this would really enable us to essentially drive up. All we would need is a place to park it during the time for people to onboard. We see it as not only being obviously for COVID vaccines, but as we move forward for flu vaccines, it could go further childhood vaccines. So we see it as being a long-term investment for the health of our community.
So, I guess I have a couple of issues with that, perhaps. It's that it really seems like the bulk of the vaccinations for COVID vaccines is not, I wouldn't say completed, but, I mean, the big flood of folks has been kind of done, and I feel like your staff has done an excellent job of cooperating and working with community partners to do these in community centers and churches and things like that around town, all without the mobile vaccine clinic. And the testing, it seems, is being done by a lot of places outside of the county health department, whether it be private entities or the state of Kansas and everything else. And so I just question the necessity of it at this point. I'd say a year ago, I would have been all on board for it. But at this point, I kind of wonder by the time that we get a bus or whatever this is and get it retrofitted, it's probably going to be 6 months down the road. And I feel like it's going to be one of those things where, then we're responsible for the insurance costs of owning it, the maintenance of doing oil changes and everything else on it. I don't know that the benefits are going to outweigh, the costs and the time we're going to have to find a place to, safely store it, that kind of thing. And so I question that particular item. The other two items I'm fine with, the digital marquee signs and the HEPA fans, but.
Let's do this then. Why don't we go ahead and approve the digital marquee sign and the UVGI unit and HEPA fans today, and that way we can have that time to reflect on the additional item. So I would move for approval of the digital marquee sign and the UVGI unit.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflected, it passes 3-0. Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. Moving along that same list, I know that we were looking at bulk for the courtrooms, but with the renovations to the 707 Quincy as well as this building, there was approved a $1.1 million. Do we want to approve that now, or do we want to again hold that discussion until the 18th?
I'd like to hold that discussion.
Okay.
I do think, though, that maybe what we could do in the meantime, just for kind of simplicity, is if we were to consolidate all those courtroom renovations into one item, including the gallery seating, the podiums, and the audio-visual equipment, and just call that, $2.25 million for courtroom renovations, then if we decide to consolidate that with the other items later on, I think it just, kind of tightens it up a little bit. So that, I don't know if I need a motion for that, or if that's just something I could ask you to do.
Would you maybe consider keeping it as 3 items, just because the renovation, or at least 2 items? I think the gallery seating and podiums is just an outright purchase versus a construction. And keep that separate from the rest, just because it may be totally different vendors that you would even use for that.
Okay.
But yeah, I can do that.
I don't know that we necessarily need a motion for that. That's just administrative that you can take care of.
Yeah, because we're not approving the funding right now. I'm just asking for a different format.
Okay.
We do weed department.
Sure. Any questions regarding the weed department roof replacement of $40,000?
I think the roof replacement's needed. I also just wanted to kind of ask John a little bit about the denied or unfunded request for the parking lot there. I know that the parking lot in its current condition kind of inhibits the way that you guys operate with your forklifts and things like that. Is there a way that we could do a portion of that parking lot and not the entire thing necessarily? The storage, I'm primarily thinking of the storage area. I also know that the driveway coming in is in pretty bad shape from trash trucks, kind of going off to the side a little bit. Sorry, Bill. We can talk later about that. So, I mean, I know that you have explored some options on that and talked with a couple contractors in the past. I mean, what are some ways that we could do that? I know the $60,000, that's for the entire replacement of that entire surface, right?
Correct. John Landon, Director of Shawnee County Weed Department. The $60,000 was for the whole project, basically all around the outside lot of the building. I've spoken with our vendor, and we could do just that center, just north of the building. There's a little center part that we store all the trailers in. We could do that. That would really help in allowing our forklift to gain access to that equipment.
So you guys familiar with the project, I assume. So, I mean, I see that as something that if we're going to be fixing up that facility. I mean, the roof is necessary for the longevity of the building itself, but I think the parking lot is something where it's going to extend the life of our equipment that we're using over there as well. Probably fixes some drainage issues at the same time. So I don't know that we need to do the entire $60,000 project, but if we did $30,000, would that be adequate?
I think that would be more than adequate to fix the few potholes we have in the concrete and then do some type of drainage fixing on that south side of the building and that parking area.
On that, do you want to have that included as ARPA for or do you want to have that come from the 2022 capital outlay of our $900,125?
Betty, do we think that would be eligible for ARPA? I mean, I know that we had talked about another parking lot being eligible at one point.
Well, we haven't sent that, any of them that have not hit the recommendations, we have not sent those to Widow Bryan's for their evaluation of it. But at the very least, I know that this would be eligible under revenue replacement. So it would be eligible for ARPA funds, even if not in a specific, in one of those other specific categories. It would be eligible under revenue replacement.
What about the roof? Was that one approved?
The roof would be the same way, I think. I don't know if it would fall under anything else, but.
Yeah, it's already been.
It's already been
by Widow
approved.
Bryan.
But I don't remember where it fell. So, but yes, they would both be eligible. I guess it's the, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Do you want to draw the second one, the parking lot from ARPA?
yeah, I think, now I think about it, I think it might be more appropriate on the CIP.
For capital outlay?
Yeah, for capital outlay.
For the
Budget.
the parking.
Yeah, for the parking section. The roof, I think we want to go ahead and keep it under the
So let's-
ARPA, and so,
Let's take these up then as two separate items.
All right.
yeah, so.
For under the weed department roof replacement / repair for $40,000, is that a motion made to use ARPA funds?
Yes, I would move that.
Is it- Second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, reflect that it passes 3-0. All right, Jennifer, switching tables,
Yes.
going to
Sorry.
our capital outlay.
Sorry, trying to get caught up with you guys.
You're fine.
Okay, yes.
Then Commissioner Mays, is it your motion then to use from capital outlay the weed department parking and storage lot rehabilitation of $60,000?
Yes, so moved.
And you want that funded out of 2022? It's currently requested out of 2024.
Mr. John Landon, it's currently for 2024. Do you want to take that up in 2022? Yes.
If I could inject something.
Please.
We have recently received, John actually asked the state what his capital outlay fund could be used for. This is a fund that any budget he has left at the end of the year goes into this fund by statute. He has recently asked them what that can be used for, and we've gotten a very much broader definition, yes, of what that's available for. So we were just talking about whether that might be able to be spent out of that fund. So if you want to put this off, we can check on that and follow up with you on that later.
Like,
Would that be?
Betty, one of the things that I was going to ask was, we approved for the mill and overlay for the roadway that goes between Landon Arena and the Domer Arena, and that was part of the Shuttered Venue grant.
Yes.
If we're going to, or we could bundle some of that asphalt work to be done at the same time,
There you go.
that might be of cost savings to the county as
Yeah.
being a joint project.
Yeah, the funding would be different, but, and we'd have to look at that. The only thing we'd have to look at as the shuttered venue does have some requirements, some federal requirements that are a little more restrictive. And so we'd have to look at whether, since this would, if we could pay it out of his capital outlay fund, it would not have those requirements. We'd have to look at that too.
Okay, just trying to see if we
Yeah,
could bundle projects
absolutely.
together, since it's on the same facility. Okay. So, given that, Commissioner Mays, do you want to hold the parking lot till the 18th when we come back?
Yeah, yeah, but as long as it gets done, I think it's something that needs to get done. And so, I mean, how we fund it, that's kind of up in the air, but I want to make sure it gets done sometime.
Can we move to the emergency management, their mobile communications request for the 117,000? I would move for approval of that.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor say aye. All opposed. And reflect that that was approved for the 117,000 from the ARPA funds.
Okay, that's where I thought we were going, but I wanted to make sure that you
We're
had
back
what you
on
meant.
the other page.
Sorry. The EOC renovations of 50,000, is that something we want to take up now, or is that going to be grouped into other renovations such as the courthouse, the courtrooms?
Nelda, how would you prefer that we proceed with that? It is kind of a little bit, I don't know, it's in the basement, so.
It's in the sub-basement.
Yeah.
It, to me, would be a standalone project just due to the fact that it is basically a plumbing type of project, and it doesn't really implement, there's no other plumbing type projects that we are looking at currently for the
Okay.
other renovations.
All right, well, I would say out of all the projects on here, this one is needed probably as much as anything else, so I would move for approval.
I'll second. Motion made by Commissioner Mays, second by Commissioner Cook. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0 for the EOC renovations to be approved for 50,000 from ARPA funds. The item directly above that, the elections, polling place, sanitation, and cleaning. And I believe that this was really slated more for the elections in 2022.
And 24, yeah.
And 24.
Yes. Yes, and it's not a CIP item, but it, yeah.
So I think that would come to them later.
There will be no other time.
Do we want to have any other discussion?
Yeah,
And
I
again-
think I want to have some discussion on
Okay.
this particular item. So Jake.
Mr. Fisher's here.
So a lot of our polling places are buildings that don't belong to us. Is this appropriate for us to be in cleaning other people's buildings for them? And, I mean, I don't know, it seems kind of an interesting item. And also, I guess to kind of add on to that, it seems like every large election cycle, the even-yeared elections, we end up getting some sort of federal grant money to help with things like this. Is that not something that maybe would be better funded through a grant like that rather than through this?
Start off, Jake Fisher, Assistant Shawnee County Elections Commissioner. I guess, Commissioner, I may take that question in several parts. Right now, with the facilities that we use, the majority of those are churches or other civic buildings, we'll say, and we pay those facilities $50 each election cycle to use their facility. And right now, with COVID and everything going on, that is, a very small amount to pay with when you look at it from the standpoint of in the 22 election, we know we're going to have a lot more people show up to vote than we did here in the recent election. And we still had several polling places that did ask for us to do some cleaning after our election here just last week. And we anticipate that that number will go up in 22. And so with that being said, you know, we don't want these facilities to come to us and say, I'm sorry, the $50 you pay us doesn't come close to covering any cleaning fees that we think, or that our, say, our deacons or our elders or whomever in our organization want to have done if we're going to continue to allow you to use the polling place. So we look at it as a way to keep that relationship going so that we don't lose those facilities. Because I can tell you in my short time when we had to find one new polling place out of 94, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of man hours to make sure that that facility will work for a polling place. And so that's why we feel that this is very important.
And how many polling places are we talking?
On this is only, not every place requests this, but we've had a handful that have requested it this year for the 21 election. And so we anticipate that we'll have a few more request it next year, just because you're going to have so many more people coming through their doors.
And this is we clean it after we leave?
That's correct.
And do we have a preferred vendor, or is this something that we've just kind of done on?
There has been a vendor that was used previously that has done a fine job and had a very reasonable rate that worked for this cleaning.
Do we want to break that into two pieces for round 1 ARPA and round 2 ARPA, since we're talking about the 22 election and then the 24 election?
Well, I guess that kind of brings me to another question, though, is this retroactivity to pay for the cleanings that we did this last election cycle?
Well, I will say that this isn't just for 22 and 24. If you look at the actual request we put in, it was 21 through 24. The way it was broke down was it was a smaller amount in the 21 and 23 elections, larger amount in the 24 and 22 and 24.
So some of it is retroactive.
Yes.
And is that money then going back to the elections office, or? Okay. And so that would then be supplementing their budget?
Yes, it would be journal entry back to the elections department to correct the funding that was used if it's already been paid.
Okay. But again, we're coming up on the end of the year fast as to other expenditures. I mean, they would need to know pretty quickly whether or not that's in or out for their budget.
If I may add, the amount requested for 21 was, I believe, $2,400. And for next year in 22, it was $9,600.
So you could, if you wanted to, make it only be for 22 forward and not go retroactively.
Or we could say $11,000 if that's what 21 and 22 add up to.
That'd be my
Any of those,
preference.
yes.
So if we approve that for round 1, $11,000.
Yeah, I think honestly of that, I would say the retroactivity is probably more important because it's unbudgeted expenses that, are COVID related. So I would say, let's do.
Jake is telling me 12,000 was 21 and 22, if that's what you were meaning to cover all of it.
Math is hard.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would move that we approve $12,000 for that.
All right.
I'll second that.
Motion to approve $12,000 from the ARPA funds, knowing that that is going to go for the 21 and 22 elections. Motion made by Commissioner Mays,
All right.
second by Commissioner Rippon.
Was it 21 as well?
Yes.
21 and 22. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion made by Commissioner Mays, second by Commissioner Rippon. All in favor say aye. All opposed. Approved for $12,000. The detainee body scanner of the Department of Corrections of the $150,000. This is for inmates that are entering the facility that would be scanned as part of a intake process.
Brian Cole, Shawnee County Department of Corrections. Yes, this would serve two purposes. One of them is for public safety, for the scanning of those that come to the facility, for any types of contraband, drugs, weapons, knives, anything you have. Also, it allows for us, in speaking with our consultant on this, is to maintain the proper social distancing, to do more security hands-off. So this, not only does it have the public safety issue, it does have the public health issue as well. And this was something that we have seen with the increase of contraband that have come in through other facilities as well as ours.
Director Cole, would this be similar to what we would see in an airport?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is something that's necessary, especially when we face a staffing shortage over there. The less time that our guards are using searching people, I think this is a good idea, so I would move for approval of this.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Mays, second by Commissioner Cook for the approval of $150,000 for the detainee body scanner from ARPA funds. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0. Okay. That brings us, I believe, through the bulk of the items. On the park renovation for 5 to 8 parks of $1 million, this is really moving this from our capital outlay to the ARPA, because it would have been possibly things we would have taken up at some future point as a capital outlay. And I see that as part of our negative economic impacts. So I would move for approval of the $1 million.
Well, can I just ask a
Sure.
couple questions of Tim real quick? So Tim, we renovated a bunch of playgrounds recently, and I know that we had gotten some grant funding to help out with that, but can you kind of just remind me, because it's been a while, how much did we spend on that, and how many parks were we able to redo the playgrounds on?
Tim Laurent, Shawnee County Parks and Recreation Department. I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I think we ended up doing 11 parks with that money, and that was just playground replacement.
And that was, how much did we spend? It was short of $1 million, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this would be pretty quality renovations if it's just 5 to 8 parks, right? So
Well, it's not just 5 to 8 parks, to be honest with you. What we have identified more than that. We have, and I can run through the list of the parks, if you'd like to know. I
Well-
would say Gage Park, the play area is probably the one where we would spend, I don't want to say we'd spend most of the money, but that's one we get started on immediately.
So are you looking primarily at playground structures then, or is this picnic tables and shelter houses and everything else?
Yeah, what we wrote in our description here when we submitted it to the Sparks Committee was that this was renovation of multiple parks following the direction of our department's master plan. Improvements would include play surfacing, replacing obsolete equipment, infrastructure including sidewalks, lighting, drinking fountains, and any ADA requirements needed. Our plan has been to make all needed improvements in a park, allowing us not to return for major work for a minimum of 5 to 7 years. And the parks that we had listed were Gage Park, Playland area, Sims Park, Ward Parkway Park, Big Shunga, Holiday, Garfield, Santa Fe, Washburn, Oakland Hills, Sherwood, Chesney.
Okay.
The questions?
No, I think that's, if we can get most of that done, that's quite a bit. So I'd go ahead and move for approval.
Seconding my motion then.
Oh, yes, you already motioned. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion then is approved, 3-0, to approve $1 million ARPA funds for park renovations, going to 5 to 8 parks. The One that was not approved, and we took up as a small capital outlay project last week, was the courthouse UTV. Thinking about it over the weekend, I think that if we're looking at what the needs are of this building and going forward and maintenance and upkeep and being able to keep the sidewalks cleared and necessary, as well as clearing the sidewalks around 707 Quincy. Betty, would that be an appropriate use for the ARPA?
As I mentioned before, there is one category on the, with the ARPA funds that is revenue replacement, and it's really, you can use it for anything associated with government services. So, I'm sorry.
I said, yeah, any operational.
Yeah, any operational type thing. So that would definitely qualify under that.
And I know there was discussions, the weed director, John Landon, had indicated he has an ATV that might work, but it is not a cabbed ATV, and it does not have the equipment. And my concern is we're trying to piecemeal something to work that's really neither, it's not designed for what we want it to be. And rather than trying to piecemeal something on the cheap, rather do it right the first time. So I would make a motion to approve $30,000 for the purchase of a courthouse UTV from ARPA. Is there a second or discussion?
Well, how much was it, 30,000?
Correct.
Which includes the blade and
The UTV and all attachments.
The alternative is we go to contracting out snow removal. And that may be low or that may be high, depends on how much snow we get in a given year.
Is our parking lot, the parking lot to the courthouse, that's done by the city of Topeka, isn't it?
No,
The south parking lot?
no.
It's not?
We are
do half
responsible.
of it?
We are responsible for, and I'm looking to our facilities manager, we are responsible for our half of that parking lot, as well as the steps, as well as our employee parking
Right,
lot.
employee parking and everything, yeah.
Nelda Henning, Director of Facilities Management. My understanding is the city does the parking lot directly to the south, but only the parking lot. We are responsible for the sidewalk and the steps, and we are responsible for our employee parking lots along with the one that's across the street from the AT&T building.
And we will be responsible for the sidewalks around the 707 Quincy.
We will be responsible for the sidewalks around 707 Quincy, and my guess is we'll probably be responsible for probably clearing the walkways to and from 707, because we will have individuals walking back and forth who are parking on this side of Quincy and walking over to the 707.
Now, Nelda, I don't know if this is a question for you, since you're relatively new to the job. How have we done it in the past?
The need for the UTV has come up because I have tried to resize my department to make sure that we have the appropriate number of staff members. And thus, I am reducing by one. When we had the staff, one would drive the pickup truck with the blade, and then one would shovel and one would spread salt. So I've been reducing my department by one. I've lost either a shoveler or a salt spreader. By having the UTV, I would have one individual doing the job of two people. So I could reduce it down to just two people, one driving the pickup truck blading and one driving the UTV blading and spraying salt at the same time.
And have we looked at like the purchasing cooperatives and stuff to kind of price this and make sure that we can?
The number you've been given was a budget number I received a couple of weeks ago from Heritage Tractor to look at it. I will not have it this winter. They're telling me at this point it's 6 months out.
That was my next concern, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way even if I was to use John's, they're telling me I wouldn't have the equipment this winter. So this winter is going to be a challenge for us in the department to try to get ahead of it. But we'll do our best as we can. But it would be nice to have it for next winter and moving forward. I believe not only for my department, but for other departments in the courthouse who will be using it, can use it. It's the courthouse UTV, so anyone can come check out the key, and if IT needs to run down to the sheriff's office, they would have that ability. My understanding is they do a lot with the corrections office on Kansas Avenue, that they would have the opportunity to use it for that type of, to shuttle equipment or move things around. So it's not just for facilities, but it's for the courthouse to use.
Okay.
So how do we plan on paying for or getting the sidewalks cleared for the winter for 2021, 2022?
I'm working with both parks to see if we can work something out to have them come help.
I didn't know if we were going to be looking at a future contingency request. Okay. Commissioner Rippon?
Nell, do you have a place to store this piece of equipment?
We do actually have a garage just outside the courthouse that we store other equipment in, the snow blowers, and I guess there's a couple of lawnmowers in there that we'll be looking at. That would be where the UTV would be stored.
Okay. Motion made for $30,000 for the UTV from ARPA. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it's passed 3-0 for $30,000 for a courthouse UTV from ARPA funds. Are there any other items from our ARPA that we want to take up today? Jennifer, can you give us a tally of what has been expended or approved
Yes.
today?
That's $2,248,750.
Okay. And there was previously $2 million that had been already approved.
I'm scrolling up there, sorry. It actually is down to 1 million because of the FEMA funding.
Okay. I'm trying to, out of the 17 million, then we would have roughly 14 million left. And I'm just trying to operate so that as we work individually, looking over the requests from now to the 18th, we have an idea of exactly kind of an approximation of what we have left remaining. Okay.
Yes, I believe everything totals $3,384,941, but I'll double check that number.
Okay. All right. Are there requests that we want to look at? Any other requests from the ARPA? Are there requests from capital outlay that we want to take up today? I would like to take a look at the sheriff's replacement of the non-Tahoes and the upfit and stripe. Again, these are reoccurring. These have been requested as a reoccurring expenditure every year.
Correct.
Are there questions that we have for the undersheriff? Yes.
I have a question. The Tahoes we purchased, these are not a lease agreement, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. That are non-Tahoes, I'm sorry.
It just, pursuit-rated vehicles. We are specifically not looking at Tahoes. Their prices have typically been more expensive. We're looking at the Ford Police Interceptor SUV, the Dodge Durango, both which are pursuit-rated vehicles.
Listen, I would just comment, I just have a concern with putting this on there as an annual expense. I don't feel it, when we're only using $1 million of capital outlay and half of it is encompassed into these items. On an annual basis, I just don't see how that's sustainable moving forward. And I'm not opposed to the projects. I'm just thinking that capital outlay may not be the appropriate place for these items.
And I don't believe that in the past we have fully funded the sheriff's request. We have partially funded, and then they have replaced partially as we go. And Under Sheriff, is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. In years past, and I've been dealing with the budget at the sheriff's office for the better part of the last 10 to 15, if not 20 years, the way we've been able to maintain our fleet over the course of time is literally through vacancy credits. And by not hiring and not filling positions. And with the way we're trying to become more proactive in being out there and keeping the public safe, our strive now is to keep those positions full. We're looking at a huge amount of our sworn staff that are eligible for retirement, anywhere between 20 and 30. So we're trying to stay as fully staffed as we can. So when those 20 to 30 people start retiring, that we're able to replace them. We're not going to be able to utilize vacancy credits as have been done in the past. I think we've seen the damage that has caused in our communication center by keeping those vacancy credits open, that we're not able to get those people now. Those are positions that are hard to fill. The entry-level cost of that salary is fairly low, and people are finding it's easier to not work as opposed to come and work shift work in a high-stress position. So that's the only caution that Sheriff Hill and I have discussed, is that if we continue to have to fund those through vacancy credits, the public safety is at risk, is both of our opinions.
It would be my request, and for your consideration, is to approve $250,000 for replacement non-Tahoes and $50,000 for sheriff uplift and stripe new vehicles, since those two do go hand in hand.
Yes, sir.
So you're reducing the non-Tahoes?
Yes.
So then it would be $25,000. So
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not looking at the numbers. So yes, the upfit cost is in correlation with the vehicle costs.
So approving 20.
250 is probably like 30.
Sorry. All right. So 230,000.
So if you're saying 250 for the vehicle,
Okay.
then it'd probably be about 30.
For the upfitting.
Upfitting. All right. So motion to approve 30,000 for upfitting and 250,000 for new vehicles.
Second.
Any other discussion?
So Jennifer's got something to discuss.
No, I'm
okay.
just updating numbers.
Is this CIP or?
This is on capital outlay
For 2022.
for 2022.
Okay, say those amounts again.
30,000 for upfit and striping new vehicles, 250,000 for replacement non-Tahoes. Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Reflected as passed 3-0. On our capital outlay, there's a large expenditure for a road grader from Public Works. This is part of, again, I believe, their annual equipment replacement. Mr. Niehaus, is there anything additional? I know it's been several months since we've talked about road graders and upgrades. Is there anything additional you want to bring to our attention or remind us?
No, but I'd be
willing
if need to.
Okay. I was going to make a motion to approve that request, again, as part of the annual equipment of Public Works.
Well, I would second that. Didn't we already approve this a while ago, or is this
We
different?
started in our capital outlay, and then we abandoned.
Okay,
Walked away.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, but-
Just real briefly to clarify, just to get a head start, knowing the extended delivery times, all of our 2022 capital equipment purchases have been approved by the commission. The only outstanding item is to wait, some form of approval is what portion comes out of capital outlay.
Okay. You already made a motion, right?
I made the motion.
So I'll second.
Motion made, second by Commissioner Mays. Any further discussion? Motion's approved, 3-0 for Public Works for $300,000 for a motor grader refresh. from the capital outlay 2022 budget. How much do we have remaining?
That's what I'm, sorry, I was on the wrong page. 320. Thank you.
I'll just note that that's not going to cover the roof for the jail.
No.
So-
I was looking at the roof at the jail being used from our ARPA funds, because I think that's where our discussion was headed earlier.
Yes, that would be my preference.
Do we want to make sure that that is a accurate amount, then discussing that on the 18th, or refining that down a little bit between now and the 18th?
Yeah, that's something we should do on the 18th, I
Okay.
believe.
On our capital outlay, there were park maintenance equipment replacement of $200,000, and I believe that, if I understood or reflect, this is the equipment that we use to maintain our equipment. This is not for new park amenities. This is for the equipment we use to keep our parks looking the way they do.
Yes, that is accurate.
They'd be like lawnmowers and
Yes.
excavators and things like that, okay.
And that was a request of $200,000, and I'd make a motion to approve that request.
Second.
Any other discussion? Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Reflect that it passes 3-0.
I would look at the Department of Corrections security system upgrade. I don't believe we really talked much at that, but that's $70,000 right now, if I'm not mistaken, so.
Was that, and that's separate from the body scanner that we previously approved. And this is Department of the Annex.
This is cameras and
Yes,
such,
this is-
right?
When we built the annex, it was, they used the term value engineered out. Basically what it was is the connectivity from the annex to the rest of the facility was never done. This allows us to upgrade it, so if we had to run instant command at the annex, we can. But right now, we do not have the capability of running it, or there's no connectivity to there. We have to get that done. And with staffing, as you mentioned, this helps us to be able to monitor as well.
So Brian, real quick,
It should be 70 is what I thought.
yeah, 70 annually for 5 years was the request.
Yes.
So
Yes, it should be 70 for each year. I don't know where 75, yeah, it should be 70.
There's the Annex security upgrade.
I'm looking at
That's a
the,
one-time.
oh, okay, so there are two.
Yeah, the annex for that is for new cameras. The upgrade is for the connectivity. Yes.
Do we have enough to fund both?
That would be $145,000 for both.
Okay.
So would it be your request to fund both?
That would be my motion, that we fund both the DOC Annex security system upgrade and the other DOC security system upgrade.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Mays, second by Commissioner Cook. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. All opposed? And that would be approved. Angela, if we could update those.
What's the total on that one?
So that would be enough to do the Maynard Conference Center LED lighting.
Either that or tackling 3/4 of the sidewalk and trail enhancements annually budgeted for Parks and Rec.
Hang on, I'm showing that's at 925,000.
Well, let's double check our math then. That would be, 925 would be 75,000 remaining.
Yeah.
No, you've already spent $100,000 of it on small items.
Oh, yeah, so we're over.
No? Let's
Tell
go
me-
back.
300,000.
I have
Let's start
at the top.
And you have 70,
Mm-hmm,
then 200,
mm-hmm. then 300, then 30, and 250.
Okay, I got off. I subtracted 100, so 200, sorry. Yep, what happens when I do it manually?
It's all right. That's what we have computers for.
That's right.
So we're 15,000.
So you're 25, right about $25,000 over. So if you, I mean, that amount is approximately the amount of the sheriff's upfit.
Well,
Well-
park maintenance equipment replacement, can we reduce that by 25,000?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or the motor grader, one or the other.
Kurt, I mean, your budgeted cost of 300,000 for the motor grader, if we reduce that by 25,000?
We can do it.
Okay. So amendment then is made to the motor grader expense, reducing it from 300,000 to 275.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook, second by Commissioner Mays. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Passes 3-0. That then brings us to a completion of the allocated monies for the capital outlay.
Correct.
And I'm going to hold this then till the 18th rather than having it passed as a final, so that again, if there are corrections or additions or amendments that we want to make, we can take that up on the 18th.
Yes.
Is there anything further we want to take up today as part of the discussion of the ARPA or capital outlay? I do want to thank all of our department heads for your cooperation. There's a lot of working as a team to say, how can we make this work? A good example was from the Parks and Rec and the weed department working with facilities on snow removal. And I do really appreciate the work that's put into this by all of our departments to work together as a team. And I hope that we can continue to do so as we move forward on this. It's been a really asset working with Parks and Rec and all the different departments in the county where we come together as a team. So.
Yeah.
Seeing nothing, we will have further discussion of capital outlay and IRPA funds round 1 on November the 18th. Our next item.
Item 5, administrative communications.
This is an opportunity for any department head or member of the public to address the commission on any item. Russia people. All right. Commissioner Rippon, anything to report?
I attended the Sunflower Classic showdown over in Lawrence. Jim, do you have any comments? All right. Just checking. It was a great time. I had a good time. The weather was perfect.
I think that KU still is ahead overall in their
No,
wins.
no way.
No?
No, in the
After-
series.
In the
It
series,
goes-
going back to the
100
1920s.
years or whatever, yeah, they are.
Going back to the beginning of time. I believe that I saw that posted by one Christy Apple Hans-Eckert.
So in recent history, in the last 40 years, probably.
I would note that Washburn had a great win over the weekend, and their final home game is this weekend.
And the result of that home game likely makes playoff implications, so.
Everybody would encourage everybody to come out and watch Washburn and support their local university.
This has become kind of like the drive now, hasn't it?
Yes.
We have to discuss sports after.
I would note that there is no meeting. Commissioner Mays, do you have anything to add for administrative communications? There is no meeting on the 11th, and that is due to Veterans Day, and I would ask you all to take time to celebrate in honor of the veterans that have defended our country, and this is a honorable recognition and holiday. And so I know that there are a number of employees that may still be working even though they are veterans in the Department of Corrections, Parks and Recreation, and the Sheriff's Office. And so as essential employees, we recognize you even though you are continuing to work to support our community. Madam Clerk, our next item.
Item 6, executive session.
There is not a need for an executive session today. We are adjourned.
John?